Today is January 12th, 2026. This is our first class of 2026, and we are discussing Parshat Va'era, second Parsha in the book of Shemot. And good to be back from Israel, and um uh, just came back with just one book this time, which will figure its way into sermons or classes near us. This is Drasha. Drasha. It is Iyunim b'Parshat HaShavua. I'm a big collector. A big collector. I like picking up books on the Parsha because that's what I do and that's what I write about. And I like reading what people write. So this is uh, Penina Neubert, who writes about, she takes Midrashim in a way that I enjoy reading, and I'm sure I'll make use of it in the future. I just happen to have it beside me on my desk. Uh, it's I want to explore today something that kind of straddles both last week's Parsha and this week's Parsha, and obviously goes all the way through the rest of the Torah, and that is the relationship between Moshe and Aharon. Um, there are things that catch you, and it catches me in this week's Parsha in Va'era, but the antecedents of that relationship and the description of that relationship already exists in the previous Parsha. So we'll dial back to last week's Parsha as a way of kind of refreshing ourselves from the beginning of the book. And I'm not sure we're going to get very far into the Parsha. Um, but I but I but I want to kind of keep as a question um, this idea of the dyad or the duopoly or the duet, whatever word we want to use for this, um, that it is a leadership style and a leadership team, and how effective that is, and how that plays out in various forms. Um, is how effective it is in the Torah, and whether or not it is an effective leadership model elsewhere, where it works, where it doesn't work, how it plays itself out in both, you know, drama and creative life, and also perhaps, in addition to political life, corporate life. And I think I'm kind of honing in on something. I haven't clarified it completely, but I can be helped by everyone here to do that. Um, and so I'm putting it out as the theme here, and let's just take a look at the texts where this starts. And it's going to be back in last week's Parsha, chapter 4. Uh, we're back at the burning bush, um, and I'm just going to pick it up, where God is giving Moses all these signs, and Moses complains to God and says, "Look, I can't do this. I'm, Vayomer Moshe el Adonai bi Adonai, please, my Lord. Lo ish dvarim anochi. I'm not a man of words." Stephanie quoted that as a way of remembering her father. I'm not a man of words. Lo ish dvarim anochi. Nice kind of good verse fragment to describe a person. Gam mitmol, gam mishilshon, from yesterday and the day before. In other words, I've always been a kind of, non-articulate person. Um, which always reminds us that when it gets to the book of Dvarim, it's a lot of irony here. I don't, he starts out not as a man of words and becomes a man who basically doesn't stop talking. Okay. Gam itmol, gam shilshom, gam me'az dabercha alavdecha. Not even since you have spoken to your servant. Ki chvad peh uchvad lashon anochi. I'm heavy of mouth and heavy of tongue, which is an awkward expression that either talks about a physical impediment, or some kind of, maybe it's a speech impediment, maybe there's a speech malfunction here, and we don't have to go into that direction to really parse what that means. This is a man who doesn't speak well according to his own self-characterization. It's at that point that God kind of loses it with Moses and says to him, Mi sam peh la'adam, o mi asumi leim, o cheresh, o fikeach, o iver, halo anochi Adonai. It's just an astounding statement that God would make to him. God said, who placed a mouth in human beings? And who is it that makes one mute or deaf, or open-eyed or blind? Is it not I, God? You know, the theology here is that all these kinds of deformities or not abnormalities, but impediments, um, they have their origin in God. That's a very difficult thing to grasp, especially if you are one of these people that are um, mute, deaf, blind, etc. But God is taking credit for this and saying, look, I'm the one that does this. I gave you this power, or I am withholding this power from you. And so therefore he says, so now go. Ata alech, vanochi empicha. Don't, it's like, I'll be with you. I'll be with your mouth. Vorotecha vohoreticha asher tedaber. I will instruct you as to what to speak. And Moses again says, no, like, be Adonai. Please, God, shlach na biati, shlach, send someone else. Send by whose hand you will send. This is a very awkward Hebrew, but he means here, don't send me, send someone else. And it's at that point, God loses it. Vayicharaf Adonai Moshe, vayomer, halo, Aaron achicha Levi. He said, is there not Aaron, your brother, the Levite? Yadati, I know. Ki daber yadaber, he can speak. Yeah, he can speak. V'gam minei hu yotzei likratecha, v'ra'acha v'samach b'libo. I know that he can speak, yes, speak, and here, he's even going out to meet you. When he sees you, he will rejoice in his heart. V'dibarta elav, you speak to him, v'samta et advarim befiv, and you put the words in his mouth. V'anochi ya'im picha v'im pihu, I myself will be with your mouth and with his mouth. V'onidechem et asher ta'asun, and I will instruct you both as to what to do. V'diberhu lecha el ha'am, he shall speak for you to the people. V'hayahu yeh lecha lefeh, he shall be a mouth for you. V'ata tiyeh lo le'elohim, and you shall be a God for him. V'ramateh hazeh tikach biyadecha, and this staff take in your hand, asher taseh bo et ha'otot, with which you should do the plagues. Okay, and looking at this closely, I'm puzzled by a lot of very basic questions, like you're choosing Moses to be your leader, and yet Moses is, by his own self-description, flawed, because a leader has to be able to speak clearly, which could mean he has to speak without an impediment or speak with the confidence that is necessary to be articulate and clear. And and he is not agreeing to do that, which should disqualify him already as a leader, because he's not following what you want from him. And the fact that God still insists that he will be the leader, I think, is astounding still, right? That God doesn't fire him on the spot for refusing, which tells you a lot about what God wants and how God relates. And then the fact that there's a plan B here. And the plan B is when Moses says, I can't do it, bi Adoni shlach na bi'ati shlach, and God says, after his anger, like this terrible anger, Aaron achicha Levi yadati ki daber yadaber hu. Aaron, your brother, the Levite, I know he can speak. Yeah, he can speak. And he's coming to you. He's coming out to you. And he's going to see you. And he's going to be happy. He's happy to see you. And so, is this all part of the original plan, or is this, the okay, we're going to go with plan B? So I'm going to just let that sit for a while and take Stanley, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to say
Oh,
something
sorry.
too.
Okay, so Stanley, then Tova. Go ahead.
So,
And then Nate.
given that God is boasting, so to speak, about all the things he can do, why doesn't he just fix Moses' speech impediment?
Isn't that such a
Solve the
great,
problem that way.
isn't that a great answer? Great, suggestion. And so what does it tell you? I mean, it could tell you there are a number of ways to interpret it, which is obviously God is not going to do that. I mean, here we have this miraculous. Once again, no, you put your hand up. We have this miraculous appearance of the bush and the burning bush. The burning bush is not consumed. That's a miracle, and we have a whole string of miracles here. The staff, the water, the lots and lots of things that are going on miraculously. So it's like I almost want this. Stanley, the paradigm here is the Wizard of Oz, where they end up at the wizard, and at the climax of the movie, and the wizard gives each of the characters what they're looking for, and all of a sudden the Scarecrow has courage, and the Tin Man has a heart, and the who has a brain? The lion has courage, the Tin Man has a heart, and the Scarecrow has a brain and it happens by fiat of the wizard who gives them all, and that works in the Wizard of Oz, but it's precisely because God doesn't do that we have a real story here, that God is not going
Can
to
I?
change him. He's got to grow into it. And I think that to me, the homily here is that Moses has to grow into the person that he will, and no one is going to make him be that. And that tells you a lot about God, that God will deal with raw material but not necessarily change a person. The person has to change himself. I think it's a really valuable insight. So now, Tova, go ahead.
Yeah, I read Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. I read him every week, and uh he talked about this issue about Moshe saying, "Oh, I can't do it. I can't speak. I can't this. I can't that." But there was one quality that he had, which Rabbi Sachs said wrote, it's the most important quality of a leader. The leader has to love the people he's leading. And Moses, he's been watching him throughout the years. What a kind person he was. How he killed the guy in when he was in a palace.
Yeah, the
So he
Egyptian
killed
taskmaster.
the the Egyptian, and then when he was a shepherd, he absolutely loved the sheep. He took care of them. There's a story when the sheep got
It's
lost. He went to
lost,
look
right,
for
right,
it.
right, right. Yeah.
So Sachs says the only good, the only quality that is a necessity is love for the people you're leading, and feel that they will do that which they should do, which are they supposed to do. And everything else, as you said, he will probably grow into it. Also, his brother helped out. So
Well,
he
that's
had some help.
right. So that's
You
what
know,
we're
but if you don't love the people that you lead, you shouldn't be leading them. That's
absolutely.
that's what Rabbi Sachs, that's why he was so beloved, by the way, by everybody. He really loved the people that he was talking to. There was a whole
Absolutely.
so I think that's the quality that
Very nice. And so it's very interesting, and we'll probably get into it because the rabbis will tend to look at Aaron as the more beloved figure of the two. So I think there's what to discuss here in terms of the roles that they play and where they inhabit the consciousness of the people. But of course, Rabbi Sachs's point is very important. So Nanette and then Marlene, go ahead. Annette, you have to unmute.
So, hey, Rabbi, I want to hit it from a different angle. I mean, I wonder if, and you said this many times, if Hashem is the director, then if Moses already, I don't want to do it, like, if the director of God, if he hears Moses saying, I don't want to do, I can't do it, like, why did God even bother? I understand that maybe he figured that Moses would turn into what he wanted, but that's taking a big chance.
Well, I
Don't you
think that's a very good question, and I think it underscores, just where how the plot is moving. And here's what I'll say in God's defense, which is Moses is the perfect candidate to lead the people, because Moses is both a part of and differentiated from the people. He, a leader has to tell a story, and a leader has to embody the story. And Moses is a person who embodies the story because he uh, starts out as a Hebrew, as a child, as an infant. He is adopted in the pharaonic household by Pharaoh's daughter, who is a rather righteous person, and raised by her. To what extent he knows his own identity, I think, is a subject for our interpretive debate. Tend to believe that at some point he is aware that he is different from the rest of the Egyptian household, and that he knows that he has kinship with the enslaved Hebrews. So, the only way I can substantiate that is because the text says over and over at the beginning, he goes out to his brothers. Now, the question as a reader is the narrator saying that because the narrator knows that Moses is going out to the brothers, or is the narrator projecting into Moses his own affinity to what he's doing? Well, that's the question for interpretation. So Moses is differentiated. Moses is has the moment where he smites the Egyptian taskmaster, as Tova mentioned, and that's the moment where his passion and his sense of justice and his sense of agency for the victim is aroused, and he pays a huge price for it. He also risks his life for this. He acts with courage. I spoke about this on Shabbat, saying that what we're seeing unfold in Iran here, really for the people that are out there on the streets who at any minute could be killed, they're really demonstrating a lot of courage, something that is we have to support, and it's awesome to behold, and hopefully it will lead to something. But here is a moment of great courage, which then results in exile, and an exile person has to ask a very fundamental question, which is, do I remain in exile or do I, go back? And at a certain point, which is the burning bush point, when Pharaoh is dead and he has a kind of, possibility, that's when God charges him. So it works perfectly literarily that Moses is the perfect person, for this task, and it will emerge as the at least the best example available. We don't we I wish we had a kind of a slate there to choose from so that we can elect somebody, but we don't. The best we have as named characters, of course, will be Aaron, who has a co-leadership role here. But Aaron is not Moses, and that's where we're going to go with this. So why is he chosen? He's chosen because God sees him as exemplary for all the reasons that we mentioned, and he's precisely the moment of definition for himself, which is critical for leadership. Marlene Herman.
When he says he can't do something, perhaps it's his self-examination that he really has these qualities. And as any parent or teacher would know, you bring out the best in someone who already has those qualities, as opposed to saying, well, he has to grow into them. He already possesses them. He just has to come to the realization that he does have that power and he can use it. He
So
was chosen from when it was in the Teva, when he was saved in the first place. So we already have him picked out as a special guy.
there are special aspects to his life already from infancy, correct? And is God's plan here a plan that is involves, I know what the roadmap is for his life and that he will evolve into this. I know that. Or is there a series of tests? That was, by the way, the plan for Abraham was, I have the right stuff here. Here's a series of tests. Um, Moses doesn't seem to have that kind of roadmap. Moses is this individual who has this um, tremendously different origin story, um, and therefore is has to, as his as part of his life, at least the early part of his life, has to sort out who he is. And sorting out who he is means I will rise to the challenge to help bring out these people and to liberate these people as I myself am liberated.
But he was brought up by his mother for
Yes.
some years till he was weaned. And so that meant he was given the underpinnings of being part of the brotherhood.
Well, so therefore you lean to the interpretation that he knew who he was. There is something like that, and I think that that's very compelling. That he's an adopted person, and as an adopted person would see that at least he's different. I mean, I don't know what ancient Egyptians look like other than from looking at, whatever the pictures are, but let's pretend that we know that Moses is a Canaan, is an Israelite and looks kind of like me, you know. You know, I mean, I don't know what he looked like,
But he
but
didn't run away at the burning bush.
he wanted to, and God kind of, I think that this is the dance here is that it follows a line, a certain archetype, which is the reluctant prophet. God wants him, he doesn't want it, and finally God makes a deal with him. And the deal is a kind of, the card that God plays is, I have your brother, and your brother is the person that is going to lead with you, and your brother is the perfect complement to you because you can lead and tell him what to say, and he can do this with the proper tone and the proper comportment, and still have your authority. Okay, Susie, go ahead.
Yeah, so weaning takes place at around 2 years, I think, back then. And somebody who's removed from his environment at that age is likely not going to have memories of it. But and we can speculate whether Bat Paro did or didn't tell Moshe anything about his origin. But as you were saying, so ancient Egyptians didn't grow beards. It wasn't, they didn't have the follicles for it.
Okay.
And the Semites did.
Uh-huh.
And so when he went through puberty, at that point, if not before, noticing there perhaps other subtle things about the way he looked, he realizes that those people are his.
Well, whatever we can speculate is differentiated about him physically, I think is worthy because we see that phenomenon play out with adopted children, as and especially in where racially parents are of one race and the child is of another race. I mean that plays itself out all the time because the child will identify him or herself as being different just in terms of racial, skin or other features. Um, and typically, that child in the cohort of the rest of the children will suddenly all, realize that they're different as well. It's, we are educating a generation to not care about these things for all the right reasons. Um, but you can imagine that Moses would have been somewhat self-conscious, that he either looked differently, walked differently, or he just had a taste for chicken soup and gefilte fish. John, go ahead.
Well, one of the great things about Moses is that he spoke back to God.
Yeah,
And maybe this is contra the text, but I'm thinking God really liked the fact that Moses stood up and said, well, I don't think I can do this. And God liked that. And that's the way I read it. So I think in this way, he's consistent with his later behavior where he spoke back to God.
sure. And Susie commented that that's Abraham also. And I think that that is somewhat illustrative of Judaism and the Bible's imprint on a Jewish character, that we're not automatons, that we don't just follow, and we actually resist that model of leadership. When you see, I don't want to be too antagonistic, but when in some circles in our Jewish people, and when rabbis have just so much power where they tell people and the people answer to them, and we see this playing itself out in Israel with the Haredi life, where the rabbis as a group are blocking. They want to block their flocks from being conscripted in the army. Um, that's not a traditional mode of Jewish leadership or Jewish communal life. We are organized, and we certainly follow leaders, but we are also inculcated with the idea that we can question and we could argue, and that's
That-
really the strongest part of it, and that comes right from the beginning. Morialata, welcome.
I have another. Can I have a question?
1 second,
Oh, wait.
Tova. Go ahead.
Excuse
Go
me.
ahead.
Okay, my turn.
Your turn, Alana.
Okay, welcome back.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Chaya. Okay.
Excellent.
Um, so I just want to make a little comment that I think the Torah wants us to know that you can be a great leader even if you have a speech problem.
Yes.
That's one thing. And then the Torah wants to teach us that you should have good relationship with your brother. And
Let's hold on to that second idea, and both ideas are really important. That while speaking is really important for leadership, it may not necessarily be the only thing. I mean, you know, we have just a few examples of leaders who were not proficient speakers. If you saw the beautiful movie, The King's Speech,
Oh,
that's
yes.
really an excellent example of someone who had an impediment, who, at the right moment in the life of England, rose to the task. And I thought that movie was just brilliant in terms of capturing, the tension and the real frustration of not being able to speak well. And he rose to the task and he spoke properly to unite the nation. Yes. All right, Stanley, and then Tova. Go ahead, and then John.
Okay.
So I'm thinking of why Moses was so reluctant to accept the leadership role. And I'm thinking of it from a psychological standpoint. And this
Sure.
is only one theory about stuttering. There are others, certainly including biological ones. But one psychological theory, which really stems from Freud, is that it has to do with the person's handling of aggression. Now, we know that Moses had his problem with the expression of anger, with killing the Egyptians, with throwing the tablets down, with striking the rock, and so on. So, what is the stuttering? It's sort of a compromise between expressing something and withholding something. So Moses might have recognized that he could either be too silent in the situation with Pharaoh or too angry, too aggressive. That is, that the impulse behind the stuttering may break out in the wrong way.
Interesting. That's from Freud. That's Moses
Yeah.
and monotheism.
No, not
Um,
Moses and monotheism. It's from the idea of that the lips are libidinized is the work. That is the notion that, Freud's main concepts about drives were sex and aggression. So this has to do with aggression, that the symptom has to do with how the aggression is
yeah,
expressed and not expressed. That is the
interesting.
impulse and the defense against it. That's
Beautiful.
not Moses and monotheism. That's from some other
Some of them.
of
Got
his
it. Okay.
works on the ego and the id.
Interesting. Go over to Tova now.
I
Then
just
John.
that was a very interesting theory, really. I have a question. One of his characteristics says that he was modest,
Yes.
that nobody ever was as modest, and that's his why this is why he was so beloved. Only in the beginning he was reluctant, but once he became the leader, I didn't see any modesty in him at all. Right? Isn't that one of his characteristics of being
Moses,
modest?
yes, and it does demonstrate itself out in
It
later
says that.
stories. Yes, it does say that, and we could argue that of course this moment is a moment of modesty, uh, but modesty, what the Torah means in terms of anav, uh,
Yeah, enough. Yeah.
is not self-deprecating. It is in the sense that there's a sense of self-understanding, and it may be more or less what Stanley was mentioning, which is I am aware of my tendencies to I'm aware of myself, and um, that's a different kind. It's not what we call modesty, but it's because it means you don't have to deprecate yourself all the time. You are simply aware of your limitations, and you're aware also of where you excel. That is a different kind of humility. That kind of humility doesn't require constant praise and constant, validation. John.
Well, Moses describes himself as having a speech problem. Yet, if you read the text, he speaks eloquently throughout his life. So, where is the evidence in the text that he had a speech problem other than his own statement?
It's interesting, the Torah can't give us the doubling of words or the doubling of letters or it's not going to do that for us. The Israeli satire show called HaYehudim Ba'im, their character of Moses is constantly stuttering when he speaks to the people, and he'll say things like he'll repeat the Ten Commandments and go no, that kind, and so the Torah is not going to do that, but we have to listen to this and listen to it in the sense that it's coming out, if it's in Moses's voice, it's coming out this way, or we have to allow ourselves to imagine that God is saying this to Moses, and in fact, Aaron is repeating it, and that I think lends a different kind of dynamic. I just want to go to what Bob wrote to the chat group, reminding us of yeah, go
But
sorry.
what does it mean, כבד פה וכבד לשון?
Yeah, these are
Heavy, what is,
heavy.
as it way,
It's complicated. It's
what does it
it's
mean exactly?
exactly it's either physical or emotional impediment. And I'm back to Bob, the Cyrano de Bergerac thing. So you want to explain that, Bob? You want to explain what you mean?
Well, Cyrano de Bergerac was a great swordsman, a leader, but he had a large nose.
Yeah,
And he felt very embarrassed. And so he had someone else do the speaking for him
yeah.
in the play by Edmund Rostand to do things. So I was sort of wondered, is there any modeling going on here with Aaron and all that. Just a
So
thought.
I think there is, and thank you for the comment because it'll let us move to the theme, which is that there is a complementarity to Moses and Aaron, which I think is the desire for God here. God, it's if when I read that text, and I'll put it up again, and so it's God is angry, but okay, Vayomer, Halo Aron Achicha Levi. It's like I have God. You get the sense that God is so flummoxed by what Moses is saying, and so desirous of having Moses as a leader, and God has to pivot instantly to a plan B. My plan A was I want you. I want you to do it. I want you to be the total package. I want you to get up. I want you to be the spokesman, the chief, spokesman, the leader, and the executor of the people. They want you to have both charismatic leadership function and executive function and legislative function all wrapped into one. And then Moses say, I can't do it. I can't do it because I can't speak. And it's like God has to pivot immediately to, all right, here's the plan B. The plan B is, Hello, Aaron Achicha Levi. Isn't Aaron your brother? You're the Levite. Yadati ki daber yadaber. He's a good talker. And this, I think it's a real puzzle. I don't know how to really interpret this, with any kind of compelling interpretation, which is how is it that Aaron is coming to greet him? How is it that Aaron knows? The only thing I could spin out of that is the following, and this is not. I don't win popularity contests with my colleagues on this, but I really believe that what you have in the backstory here is the whole notion that the death of Pharaoh creates a moment of amnesty, and that the amnesty is what sets Aaron out to look for Moses, and which means if the Pharaoh is dead, there's no one to avenge the taskmaster's death, right? That is gone. And so the amnesty is the exiled manslaughterer can return. And so while the information may be known, may have reached Midian, Aaron is going to go and pursue Moses. And it assumes, and this is why I'm saying I have really a long, limb to go out on here. It's assuming that when Moses took off, he said he let the message go that he's heading in that direction. So imagine here, that the brother is looking for the brother 40 years later, after the first exile, and God knows this. So I get a lot of unanswered questions here. What I want to just kind of flip to for a second is, isn't it interesting? And this is a point that somebody mentioned before, which is the notion. I think a lot of the brotherhood notion. So when you put this together with all of the other examples of brothers that we have seen up until now, Cain and Hevel, not a good pairing. Okay, Isaac and I'm sorry, Isaac and Ishmael. Okay, I think they had a good relationship, but Ishmael was kicked out. Jacob and Esau, not a good pairing. Joseph and all the brothers, not a good pairing. There's tremendous strife between them all. And here we have really, I think, the first example of brothers who truly care about each other and who can, in their comportment with each other, present something united to the people. I think this is really a big theme. And it's a big theme given that the people, from the moment this people was incepted, has in its DNA a lot of fractiousness. And we see ourselves as a fractious people, and we understand ourselves to this very second as a people that, in order to survive, needs a modicum of unity despite our fractiousness. And I can't underscore how crucial that is. It is the central conversation that is going on in the Jewish world, let alone the Israeli world. It's a, how do we all get along when there's so many forces within our own self, you know, presentation that really want to pull us apart? Ilana, go ahead.
When Aaron's two sons died, Moses, right? When
Yeah,
they sacrificed their own sacrifice. So Moses was mourning terribly, and the commentary said that he was considered as their father because he taught them Torah. Because when you are a teacher, you're
you're,
almost
you're
like a parent.
absolutely. So there is something going on there. There's also, a moment of conflict between the brothers because, Moses is so fixated on doing the proper sacrifice, and Aaron has just suffered this grievous loss of his two sons, and Moses is not sharing the grief with him. Okay. Uh, any other comments here? Let me just go on just a couple of so um, this is what you're going to do. You speak to him, put the words in his mouth. He will function in this way, and you'll take the staff. Okay, I'm going to skip forward to there's a line in our parsha. Okay, and the line in our parsha is so God says to here before we get to our parsha. Let's look at verse 27 here. God speaks to Aaron and says, Lech likrat Moshe. We already know that Aaron is coming to Moses. So my question before is, is it self-initiated that Aaron goes out to Moses, or is he going as a response to God? That's a good, interpretive debate. Lech likrat Moshe midbar. Go see Moses in the midbar. Vayelech, he goes. Vayifkeshehu bahar Elohim. And he meets him at the mountain of God, Vaishaklo, and he kissed him. So here we have this extraordinary moment. Just close the screen for a second. Extraordinary moment where two brothers meet up, and again, it goes counter to all of the different reunions that we have seen. I'm kind of, stuck on this theme. I talked about it way back at Parshat Vayeshev, where the brothers are all in one area near Dothan, and Joseph is coming to see him, and they conspire to kill him. That's not a reunion. And even before that, it's Jacob and Esau. Jacob is sending gifts to Esau, his brother, and worried that Esau is going to kill him. And then when Esav sees Jacob, he runs towards him and he hugs him and he embraces him, Vayishakehu, and they kiss. And the rabbi's not willing to give up. I mean, sorry, I'm not going to be too critical, but they can't relinquish the the tendency to see in Esav the aggression and and his unconcealed hatred. And they say that Esav really wants to kill him and that Esav is biting him in the neck, and that when he bit Jacob in the neck, Jacob's neck turned to ivory, and Esav was crying not because of emotion and catharsis, but because he broke his teeth. And so what it tells you is that we despite what it's this moment of great emotion and reunion, that the tension is still there. But here we have no backstory with Moses and Aaron. This is the first time that Aaron really is mentioned. There's no rivalry between them. We just don't know anything about their childhood, and we don't know anything about the fact that, why was Aaron even alive if the decree against the male children, was enforced? How is it that Aaron was alive also? Could you say that Aaron was alive because the decree comes into existence after his birth? I even read an article just before here on thetorah.org, interesting article that actually presents the idea that the two are not brothers, that through a clear analysis of the sources, it could be that they're just kinsmen and not actual brothers. what that means is that the story needs to be read somewhat differently. I'm not prepared to go there. I'm invested in the brother theme here because they work as a team, I'll develop that theme in a second. Go ahead. We have Ruth.
Uh, Aaron and Moshe don't really have a common childhood. Moshe, went sailing down the river when he was 3 months old. He grew up in Pharaoh's house. Aaron wasn't there. Then Moshe, right after he went basically from Pharaoh's house to Midian, they don't have a common childhood. They don't have a common history really at all, right? Moshe and Aaron.
Right, but somehow they know about each other.
They would
And
know about each other, but they weren't buds or anything.
okay, however, I mean, I'm going to just play my sentimentality card here, which is that even though you know, they're not buds. Aaron, see, the backstory that I'd like to write here for this is that he knows he has a brother, and he knows his brother is in the palace somehow. Miriam, who's not in the story here, she knows she has a brother too because she was the one that was responsible for saving him. So a brother and a sister know that they have a sibling in the household of Pharaoh. Okay, and I just had the experience of watching two sisters at the age of 2.5 and 6 months. What a pleasure it was to have them with me and to see how they relate. At the ages of 6 months and 2.5 years, they behave as siblings. Okay, which means that they take care of each other and they can, pinch each other sometimes. Which means that, you know, if you are just a few years older, if you're an adolescent or you're even a young adult and you know that you have a sibling who's in the house, you will do whatever you can to kind of communicate or at least be aware. Now, I don't have to go as far as the reunion of, I mentioned this a few weeks ago with regard to siblings who have been, separated by war or immigration stories. This is just part of Jewish life of the 20th century. All of us, each and every single one of us, has a story in our own families or in one degree, at least only one degree of separation, where we know of someone who is separated from a sibling or someone elder member, and you know we our imagination is populated with these kinds of reunion stories. So this is not far-fetched and not so removed from our experience that two brothers would long for each other, even though they've been separated and have, as you correctly state, nothing in common with each other. They're one is charismatic and one, has got aggression issues. Okay. All right. So here's where I want to go with this. I'll just go to the text for a second again. I lost it, and if I don't have it, then we'll go to what I need to go to. Okay, we'll go to what I need to go to, which is I think this idea of I had some fun with the AI here, and I was asking all these questions, about duality, dyads, duets, etc. And my question was, are there any other examples? And what did they do? And so ChatGPT, the AI, gave me a bunch of examples, none of which I'm really familiar with. But maybe it will concur with you. Often you have to really cross-examine the AI, to investigate. George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, Gandhi, and Nero these are, uh, duets basically. These are where one is subordinate to the other, but they are complementary to each other. Um, so King Arthur and Merlin. I wouldn't put, for example, Don Quixote and Sancho Panza. That's the master and the squire. Okay. Um, so then I asked, I'm interested in this as a leadership typology. So it goes into this and says, um, there is a leadership structure in which two figures exercise distinct and complementary forms of authority, but only one possesses ultimate legitimacy. The second leader is essential for functionality, is structurally barred by covenant, constitution, charisma, or culture from becoming equal. That's interesting. And so, what we're seeing here is that there is a hierarchy. Certainly, Moses is Moses, Aaron is Aaron. Okay, so we have role differentiation and lots of things that would be way off into a different kind of thing. And then I got into these questions of and I'll just take it off the thing here, which is we have this notion that the I I talk a lot about this guy who I enjoy watching. He explains music a lot, Rick Beato. And Rick Beato says, I'm a big fan of duets. I'm a big fan of duets. I love duets. I love watching singers sing together. And, there's something to that, right? When you watch a duet, you are seeing something play out on the stage that kind of, captivates different parts of you. And it's not that there are only two parts to us, but you know, the minimum plural is that two. And, when you are watching this, you're seeing different aspects of your emotional life play itself out. And I think that this is very useful in leadership. I guess the only way that I can compare it from a personal perspective, and I will compliment my chazan, who is a dear friend, Mike Weiss. You know, I've said this before, and I think it's just so true, which is it's one thing if on the bima there's only one person, okay? And and frankly, I can function as a shaliach tzibur. I'm not as good as Mike. I don't know the liturgy as well, but when called upon, I can do that, and that's useful because it's efficient. But it's not helpful for the congregation because I believe where it works well, and it works well in our congregation, that there's a certain kind of emotional vector that goes to one that doesn't go to the other. And that when the spotlight is, let's say, on the rabbi, the spotlight is off the chazan. And when the spotlight is on the chazan, the spotlight is off the rabbi. And that the chazan reflects a certain kind of emotional valence. And the rabbi may, in my case, reflect a hope, an intellectual valence, and some ideas and thinking about things less through emotion and more through the kinds of things of narrative and ideas. And these things play together. The best illustration of this in popular culture, in my opinion, is Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock. And why is that? Okay. It's, you have to appreciate what a classic model this is and how brilliant Gene Roddenberry was in creating these characters where one was emotional and the leader, right? In charge, he was the captain and, ordered and obviously excellent in terms of his skills and intelligence, but he had as his person on the side Spock, who was not emotional, totally rational, and given to methodical analysis so that he would not allow the emotion to govern his decision making. It's such a brilliant model here. Now, I'm not saying that the Spock and Kirk model is the Moses Aaron model, but you can splice it however you want and say, well, Moses, look, Stanley mentioned before that Moses is prone to aggression, and Tova mentioned before that Moses was beloved, and the reason why Moses was so successful is because he loved his subjects. I don't want to take strong issue with Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, alav hashalom, one of the great expositors of Torah of our generation and in the last decades. Okay, but one can make the argument, at least raise the argument, that it's not that he didn't love the people, but that people were terrified of him. He was a stern person. of all the people that you'd want to sit down with, you wouldn't want to sit down and have a conversation with Moses. Aaron is a chummy person. Aaron is the person who's beloved, by the people. But Moses is the person who's feared by the people. And Moses takes a certain place in the imagination that is the one who is stern. I mean, when we think of Moses, we think, at the moment of the golden calf, he smashed the tablets, and he basically created a civil war. He ordered the people to go out and kill those who were offensive. I mean, at the climax of the revelation. So there's something to fear in Moses, and there are other examples, and of course we mentioned, when at the end of the whole journey, when he's standing at the rock and God says to him, "Speak to the rock," and he smashes the rock. How we interpret that also with compassion or with sense that he's losing it. And even at the end, there are lots of things he says in Deuteronomy which honestly I wish he wouldn't have said. I wish he wouldn't have said these things, because they make him sound so he's still got a lot of anger in him. And so what we're saying is that when you have two, they balance each other, and that plays itself out as a psychodrama for the individuals. And I know this intuitively because I lead in a certain way, and I have, at least in the service, a partnership where I understand and acknowledge and validate and really support and really benefit from the fact that I have a competent chazan who musically is able to captivate people and allow their emotional expression in a way that, frankly, I can't. And my role is limited in, okay? If I preached in a more charismatic, emotional way, and got people to cry every time I opened my mouth, it would be a different kind of experience. I could probably take a few lessons there. Fine, okay. But the point is that there's a yin and yang, there's a certain pull, and that creates for some kind of enjoyment and experience that's full. And so, I could pull out a lot of different examples of this where collaborators, both in entertainment, in comedy, for example, or in writing movies or production, or in business, the corporate, partnerships of Warner Brothers and the Disney brothers and all of the brothers who run things, and they bring their various talents that are molded together for the sake of the whole. Now, that works when there's a great symbiotic relationship. It often doesn't work. It often falls apart. Um, and you have to be very careful with it. Here it works. Here, as it was mentioned, Alana mentioned it, there are crises in this relationship, like the death of Aaron's sons and elsewhere, right? So it's not just a straight line. It's a very bumpy road at times, but it is a relationship that is complementary, and a relationship that I think enables us as readers of the Torah to understand the Torah and to really identify it, because each of these characters, Moses and Aaron, will pull out different things in ourselves. Ruth, go ahead.
I don't want to disagree with Tova, but in terms of how much he loved the people, I mean, a few times he said, just erase me out of your book. I can't stand these people. They're stubborn. Then at the end, he says it's not going to go that well. He doesn't trust them to follow the straight and narrow after he's gone. And I don't want to say he didn't love his people, but there were, I guess he was they were in the middle of the desert. I guess there was no way for him to resign in the middle of the job except being struck dead. And I think he asked for that too. I don't know. I mean, there were definitely moments when he absolutely could not stand the people.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that we have to say, on the one hand, we so appreciate, what Rabbi Sachs is able to bring out of the text, and the texture with which he reads. I mean, there really wasn't anyone like him in the way that he articulated these things. And of course, he's doing what we all do. to greater or lesser extent, which is weaving midrash together with the biblical text and trying to present a theology in which, that is a very compelling idea. Of course, a leader has to love the people that he leads, she leads. You know, I mean, I remember even in rabbinical school, I had a teacher, well, I wasn't particularly fond of, but he did say one, memorable thing, which is if you get up and think that you are the king and that they are nothing, then you're the king over nothing, right? And that always stuck with me, which is like, mind your own arrogance, mind the tendency to think that you are so above everybody that everybody is an idiot. Respect people, respect your audience, respect who you're with, and teach, what you can at a level that enables people to rise up, play to the higher common denominator and respect them rather than to be condescending on them. And unfortunately, unfortunately, it only succeeds some of the time. I have a feeling, I mean, because I listen to speeches, and of course I enjoy when a speaker makes things very simple. It's very compelling, but I often feel manipulated by that, and that leaves me with it's good to sit through, and then afterwards you go like, so was there anything really here? Go ahead, Stanley. Go ahead.
So the way this discussion is going among you and Tova and
Yeah.
Ruth is that it's one or the other. That is, either you love someone or some group or
Okay.
whatever, or you hate them. But in fact, if I may quote Freud again here,
Go ahead.
he said there is ambivalence in all human relationships,
Uh,
so that we all can recognize this in ourselves. The same person, we can love them intensely at one time and hate them intensely, or at least like and dislike. So I think it's reasonable to say that Moses had his moments when, as Tova is saying, or quoting Jonathan Sacks, that he loved them, but other times he wanted to be rid of them.
you
So
know
he's
what?
also different in that way than everyone else.
Chen Shnei Davara Shishim said you have two contradictory poles and you need a third to mediate between them. And I think that provides a mediating path, which is, of course, we are located in a full relationship with each other, where you can be loving and you can be frustrated. I don't think that he ever gets to the point where he has some contempt for them. I really don't see anywhere in the text, but I can certainly see frustration with them. He is frustrated with them all the time, but he doesn't have contempt for them. He does love them, but it's not easy for him, for sure. Bob.
Yeah, you mentioned Star Trek before,
Okay.
and I particularly like and agree with your complementary aspects of leadership being critical here. There is an episode where Captain Kirk and others go through the transporter mechanism and they're torn into two different people. One
Okay.
with leadership and intellect, and the other more with id and all kinds of animalistic things. And they have to come back together. And so you're not going to be surprised by what I'm going to say, but there's an Aaron and there's a Moses and there's a Miriam in each of us. And so
Absolutely.
as I read these characters, it's not just two different people. The message is, what do we need to integrate in ourselves to be leaders and grow and develop? So I just wanted to throw that idea out since you brought it up with Star Trek in another capacity with Kirk and Spock.
I appreciate that. And look, I mean, I think that is it's a great theme that is going to, take us forward. The Aaron and Moses are in front of Pharaoh and they are doing things that are, collaborative and complementary and very difficult. And I think where we start with this is you can't do it alone. You can't be there as alone. And good that Moses had an Aaron, and good that Aaron had a Moses, and good that God had both of them. And good that we have each other here to discuss this and to reach the end of our time together. I appreciate everybody. Thank you all for being here. It was lovely, enjoyable. and look forward to next week. All right. So everyone have a good week. See you all. Take care. Bye-bye.
אבל מלמד, היית
Yes.
בפלורנטין?
אני הייתי בפלורנטין, כן.